You've reached Hotel Pacifico, your 5-star destination for BC politicos. Press 4 for room service. Press the star key for your hosts Mike McDonald and Kate Hammer.
Welcome back, guests. Thanks for joining us for early check-in at Hotel Pacifico. It's good to see you, Geoff and Mike.
Good morning.
I'm excited.
Are you? It's expressed by a cactus?
Got to turn it on.
Wait, this is... What is this, Mike
The batteries
McDonald?
went out.
Your
There we go.
Hotel Pacifico podcast with Kate Hammer, Geoff Meggs, and a dancing cactus.
Okay, that was awesome. We had to kick this off with style, thanks to the P&E.
Oh, I get it.
Custom cactus.
Custom cactus, the P&E, for this very moment.
I'm gonna have to show my kids that. That's gonna be a hit. That's amazing. The cactus has moves.
It does, and it may reappear some other podcast. Just stay tuned.
And an inner light.
Yes, it's like a little rave cactus. Oh gosh, listeners, join this one for YouTube if you can, or listen on your way into work. You as you probably heard, we're switching things up for the election period at Hotel Pacifico, and we're going to be joining you every morning. Our episode should be dropping around 9 a.m. But Mike, Geoff, and I are going to be up early with a daily pod through the rest of the election period, and some new segments we're going to tell you about, and a new structure to the show. How you feeling, gentlemen?
Good.
I'm pumped. Let's go.
Yep.
Okay. So every day we're gonna keep the mini bar, but it's been switched to an espresso bar, which I think is a fitting change, right?
Only shots there.
Well, I'm thinking instead of shots and glasses, is it calf or decaf? Did it jolt the campaign? Yeah, we'll get to that later. All
Might
right.
be a mini bar before halfway point of the campaign, I'm thinking too.
Oh my God, maybe we switch over. Good point.
Yeah, bottle in the desk drawer here.
Okay, so definitely, I think one thing you can expect early on, we're going to kick off every day just checking in on where the leaders are, right? And where they're going to be each day. So I guess we're day 3. We're starting this off in the campaign. David Eby is heading into Langley. John Rustad is back in Surrey. Surrey's been a bit of a magnetic center, I think, so far these last few days. And Sonia Furstenau is in Victoria Beacon Hill participating in an all candidates meeting. Let's anything we want to check in today on what they're up to? Or should we cover the campaign kickoff actually? Because I think it's the first time we've been together since Saturday, and I'm curious to check in with each of you how you think things have launched off.
Doesn't really feel like the campaign started yet, honestly. And starting on a Saturday is new to us. First time that's ever happened, at least in my lifetime, that we've had a Saturday start to the campaign. So the news coverage isn't as intense, and with this fragmented news environment we have already, it's even harder to get people
I was
to pay
going to say,
attention.
what does intense mean anymore?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe the cadence will pick up this week, but I would be surprised if anything moved the needle over the weekend based on the campaign kickoffs.
I thought that was quite a contrast because we were coming right out of the Union of BC Municipalities. There was a speech there by each of the leaders, all 3 of them actually. But David Eby got his campaign bus parked outside the convention center on Friday during John Rustad's speech. So he was in the pictures, and I think the NDP team must be pretty happy with how it looked and felt for the first few days, because Eby got a strong reaction at the UBCM, a positive one. Strangely enough, the convention delegates passed an emergency resolution, I was told, that asked the government to keep the carbon tax. I haven't been able to track that down, but if so, it's a very interesting and counterintuitive outcome.
Is that the one where they were asking for the money to be redistributed to municipalities for sort of climate risk mitigation? Okay, yeah.
Well, it kind of depends who's in the room, obviously, but
yeah, but it's a bit of an oddball. I mean, I won't get back to the UBCM because it just then to contrast. Then Eby went out and did a lot of visits to ridings where there was good groups of people and lots of crowds and reasonable sized display of enthusiasm and Burma shaving, all that stuff. But Rustad's campaign was a very different start. Just him and his wife walking to a microphone at Crab Park. And we'll talk more about content, I guess, in a few minutes. But I don't think that then he had it to Campbell River. I saw one report on social media that maybe they just added in the launch in Vancouver at the last minute. But Rustad has been more or less under wraps. He only took 6 questions at the news conference, no follow-ups, then sort of hit the road. And I think it'll be interesting to see how much he's out there and how much of the campaign is actually, in the old legacy style, and how much of it is just somewhere else, which we'll have to find out what it is and where it's not. He's not got a very visible campaign now, except for visits to groups of people, and he's not getting a tie statistically with the NDP
Well,
with that much.
he doesn't have
he doesn't
have a bus, and I'm not sure that hurts him. I think the bus is a bit of an anachronism in this day and age. But we'll see. I noticed that the NDP bus is from the bus company of a Conservative candidate, John Wilson, who's running in Esquimalt with Chosen. So it's good
Very
that they're
good bus
spreading the
company.
business around, very nonpartisan of them. But, I only interpret that Rustad's Crab Park kickoff was rather solemn, and he's trying to frame the campaign in his in his way. It was a little weird that it wasn't like he didn't have the people behind him and a bit of a cheering squad, but I guess that was the point they're making, that they're trying to draw attention to the issues. They certainly have been driving on crime and drugs all weekend. That's where they want to start the campaign. That's the turf they want. Those are the big applause lines at his event on Saturday night, which was a pretty robust crowd up in Black Creek, which is noteworthy because he's gone into Aaron Gunn's backyard on the Courtney Comox North Island ridings there, and is making a point that that's turf he thinks is fertile territory for him.
Can we stay with geography for a bit? Because I want to talk about, I want to stay in this kind of compare and contrast, particularly of the Conservatives and the NDP. And so I was going to say, you made me think with geography, there seems to be, everyone sort of ran for Surrey pretty quickly and have stayed mostly within the Lower Mainland. There seems to be consensus among the parties about where this election is going to be won or not, in staying in the Lower Mainland. But very different approaches in that David Eby is moving around a lot. He's got the bus, he's doing that quick stop method, right? And John Rustad more kind of a couple stops, right? And a different vibe, right? More the kind of traditional big energy with the NDP and the kind of, I guess, trying to channel maybe more of an excitement, a hopeful vibe. And then more of, I think, Rustad maybe arguably channeling the moment, and a bit more, I'm going to use the word dour, maybe grab a thesaurus and see if I can think of something with less stigma, but it's a more serious tone from the Conservatives. Did you see that, Geoff?
I don't think we're even seeing Rustad's campaign. And my concern, I think, in this campaign is that the NDP is going to be victorious in fighting the last campaign over again, with tactics and visuals and events and media-oriented kind of performances that are not relevant to what's actually happening in terms of getting out the vote. I think the Conservatives are test driving or retesting technologies and approaches that they've used in other places to meet the voters some other way, because Rustad's campaign pays, as Mike says, no bus, no real consideration of the media's simple podium, and they get to stand up their own cameras, all 4 or 5 of them. So he's getting a statistical tie by campaigning elsewhere below the waterline. Really, we're just seeing the tip of the Conservative iceberg. And it would be easy to sit here and disparage it and say, oh yeah, they're just a bunch of young kids. They don't know what they're doing. They're bumping into each other, but they're in a statistical tie. And so I think it'd be very interesting to know how it is that the Conservative campaign is going to identify votes and get them to the polls, because that's, of course, what has to happen. And what they're not doing it the way, I don't put this down to incompetence. I put it down to a strategic decision. And I think it'd be interesting to probe over the campaign where the Conservative campaign really is.
Well, you raise a good point about fighting the last election. And, I think in 2017, at least speaking for myself as a helper in the BC Liberal campaign, I was probably stuck in the 2013 world when we were fighting the 2017, and the NDP were using very different tactics in 2017 than 2013. And, that will be interesting to see how that progresses if the NDP are looking like they're going back to the old playbook or adapting as they go. Last night Rustad was out in Surrey. He had a pretty big crowd out at Sturco's campaign office, a couple hundred people. So, I think we're going to see Conservatives trying to show momentum during the RIP period. I think they're just probably thin on the ground in terms of advance and tour. Probably only biting off what they can chew is my guess. But we'll have to see how it develops. I mean, it's not a bad strategy to, build it as you go and try to create a sense of momentum. But that might be by happenstance more than strategy, if that comes to pass. But I think next couple of days we'll start getting a sense of more of a feel for these campaigns once they kind of get into
Yeah,
their
and I
grooves.
thought that David Eby looked relaxed. He looked comfortable. He was much more punchy in his public speaking, the snippets that I could get. I think that, as I said at the beginning, they have to be happy about how it went. The question they have to ask is there something we're missing here that we should be dealing with?
Yeah.
And I think
Is he,
that's
yeah, is
important.
he talking about the right things, right? Like he sort of was making this affordability package out of like housing and childcare. I think he was talking about insurance rates, car insurance rates. Is he talking about the right things, Jeff?
Yeah, according to the polling, but the Rustad campaign and John Rustad himself are raising the term cancel culture to a whole new level. He promises to cancel something every 6 to 8 hours. My list now is at about 6. He's going to cancel overdose protection sites. He's going to cancel ICBC. He's going to cancel the housing program. He's going to cancel short-term rental regulations. He's going to cancel all the reconciliation programs. And I don't know if it's planned or not. It's hard for the EB campaign to decide how and when to punch back. The strangest thing that I thought Rustad said was that it surfaced in some NDP opposition research from a very public podcast done earlier in September, where Rustad said he was going to require all his candidates to pledge to do free votes. In other words, to represent their constituency first and foremost, which is great red populist meat, but it's not how you run a tight government. and I was amazed by that. However, voters don't follow this stuff. It just sounds fine to them. But to me, it was an astonishing kind of forecast of the kind of pandemonium we could expect under a Rustad administration, if that's what it is, when everybody can vote as they wish every day.
Yeah. Well, picking up on that, I think, Mike, are you feeling like Rustad then, because he did flag, again, to Jeff's point, he's been sort of saying, I'll cancel this, I'll cancel this, I'll cancel this. He did say over the weekend that he's actually going to come up with a housing plan. I guess, am I being too much of a wonk to sort of expect that this sort of chorus of cancel, cancel, cancel isn't going to ride him through the next month, that he's got to pivot into something more of an offering?
I would expect that. I think at UBCM, if I have to go back there, he delivered a 30-minute speech that frankly had the attention of the crowd. There was a lot of meat in it, more meat than the premiers the day before, frankly. And people may not have agreed with everything, but he was doling out some content. Some of it was criticism, but some of it was, here's what I'm going to do, like pre-zoning on municipalities, to boost housing. He talked a lot about energy and nuclear, and so on and so forth. So, I think they're running hard probably to put the platform together and spit out bite-sized information for voters as we go in the campaign. So I'm not thinking they won't have it. I'm thinking they will have things to say. It's just a time of their choosing, I suppose.
Well, we'll be watching. Guess, I'm sure we're going to be talking a fair bit about healthcare this election. That's true of most elections, but a confluence of predictable factors, like our aging population, and unpredictable ones, like a global pandemic, have put unprecedented strain on our healthcare system. And I want to zoom in on a political bellwether community that is facing unique challenges, Kamloops, because they've been hit by a confluence of challenges, including a 51% increase in homelessness, high rates of fatal overdoses, and pressures on the healthcare system overall. This is why TELUS and Ask Wellness Society have partnered to bring the Ask Wellness mobile health clinic powered by TELUS Health to Kamloops and Meredith, with plans to expand to Penticton. The mobile clinic aims to provide primary health care and harm reduction services to people experiencing homelessness in the BC interior, and is expected to support over 4,000 patient visits per year. In BC's diverse geography, these clinics on wheels can help bridge the healthcare gap between urban and rural or remote communities. And they're another example of what it means to be BC's hometown teen. We're going to have some data to help us understand how this messaging is landing. And there's a new segment we're going to be introducing at Hotel Pacifico called Milking the Data, and it's brought to you by BC Dairy. Mike, can you tell us a little more about this segment?
Yeah, I'm going to read the tagline properly, Kate.
What?
Milking the Data, brought to you
Oh.
by BC Dairy. Farmers need guaranteed access to water to feed BC. There you go.
Okay.
That's how you
tell me more, sir.
That's how
sorry.
the pros. That's how the pros
sorry.
do it in the business.
Sorry.
Oh,
Oh my
smart.
gosh. Yeah. Right.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I
They got a
defer to
2
your
for 1 there.
excellence, Mike. Okay. God.
2 for 1.
Okay. Now that you've scratched that itch, sir, tell us more about the segment, please.
I was about to make a cow joke, but I won't. Yeah, we're going to bring some fresh data every morning in the Daily Pod with your morning coffee or your milk for your cereal. Today we're going to start with some historical data today, but we will have some fresh data as we go along during the Daily Pod. And I want to talk about how the tide goes in and the tide goes out in politics. And last election for the BC Liberals, the tide certainly went out. And there was a gap of 14 points at the end of the day in the popular vote between the NDP and the BC Liberals. Now, that's important because this election is tightening, and even though we have a different party now, Conservative, that's challenging the NDP, the polls tell us it's pretty close. And so I went back and looked at, well, what would have happened last election if the popular vote had been tied? And all things being equal, and there's a bunch of different variables like vote splits and stuff, so don't take it literally. But this is instructive in terms of how things tighten up when the popular vote tightens up, the seats tighten up, because the votes have to go somewhere, right? And so this reaffirms things we've been talking about already, where that battleground is going to be in this election. I counted 14 NDP seats that would have flipped BC Liberal had the popular vote been basically tied last election. Now, 5 of those are in the Fraser Valley. No big surprise, the NDP never used to win out there. But you've got 2 in Chilliwack, Abbotsford Mission, and 2 in Langley. So where's David Eby today? Langley. There's 3 in Richmond. Richmond, Queensborough, Richmond South Centre, and Richmond Steveston that all NDP pickups last election, all used to go BC Liberal. We're going to see these leaders a lot in Richmond. In fact, what's John Rustad talking about yesterday with a press release with Teresa Watt? They want to shut down safe injection sites in Richmond, among other places.
Where there are none, as far as I know.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's going to be any if the Conservatives get elected. 2 in the southern interior, Boundary, Similkameen, and Vernon, Monashee. Those were longtime BC Liberal seats that flipped last time. Rolly Russell and Harwinder Sandhu picked those up. They're in tough races this time. And then a collection of other seats that flipped. Parksville Qualicum, which was the last seat standing for the BC Liberals in 2017 on Vancouver Island. You know, Vancouver Island last time, the Greens ran second. They had about 27% of the vote on Vancouver Island. Surprised me when I went back and looked at that, how strong they actually were over there. The BC Liberals were a distant third, but they did have a bit of an enclave in Parksville Qualicum. So now, this election, North Nanaimo, Lanceville, and Ladysmith, Oceanside are both kind of parts of that old Parksville Qualicum riding. So that's, with the Adam Walker factor we talked about with Richard Sussman the other day, that's going to be interesting. The final 3 on the list: Vancouver Falls Creek, North Vancouver Seymour, and Surrey Panorama. Those are all seats that would have been, had the election been closer, would have flipped or would have been much more of a nail biter. So those are the old boundaries as well. So we got new boundaries now, but generally we can see where the battleground's going to be based just looking at history, right? And when the tide goes out, so will some of these seats. Now, David Eby could maybe pull away in this campaign and win by 10 or 11 points, and a lot of those ridings would be saved. But until then, they're going to be under a lot of pressure.
There's 2 other interesting things, Mike, and I appreciate this because I don't disagree with any of it. But the tide is coming in a lot of these communities and changing them fundamentally. So I look at West Vancouver, Sea to Sky, where Squamish is a huge bedroom community, all kinds of different families there than you would have seen even 10 years ago. And that's a reality in the valley as well. And how that plays out, I think politically will be very interesting. I don't think it's wrong at all to take a look at what's been going on in the past. But and this is the other question about the campaign that the Conservatives are running, is that they will be forming organizations on the ground, on the fly as this happens. People with who've never worked before are suddenly going to meet each other in the office, and maybe it'll be magic, and maybe it'll be awful. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how they're able to perform on the ground in these places, because that's going to be critical to their success.
There's a couple in this list that are the ones that are most likely to be complicated by independence. Surrey Panorama, I think, got affected by the sort of domino effect within Surrey. Vernon's another one. Like, there's a few in here that could be completely different. The other thing I wanted to ask Mike is, how much does, when you add this overlay and sort of do 2024 with or 2020 with a sort of tighten the polls, how much does it look like 2017?
There will be some changes. To Jeff's point, nothing ever stays the same exactly. There's a lot of consistency from election to election, but over time, things change. And like the interior became more BC Liberal over time, and the Lower Mainland became more NDP over time, over the course of 2 or 3 elections. So this time, I think it is a bit of a different map, in that I think the Conservatives will do better on the island than the BC Liberals did. But to Jeff's point, I think Conservatives will have a tougher time in some of these areas that in the Lower Mainland that they're changing a bit or evolving a bit. I take the North Shore as an example. North Van Seymour and Vancouver Langara, not in the North Shore, but in Vancouver, obviously, both those seats were safe BC Liberal seats for a long time. No one gave them 2 passing thoughts that they would be anything but BC Liberal. And now they're a very good chance to go NDP this election, because the Conservatives have a different offering than the BC Liberals, and the NDP have a different offering than they used to. And those have narrowed the gap and put it into the advantage of the NDP. So, and you see this in the US too. States change over time, depending on how the Republicans and Democrats change themselves. So at the end of the day, if election day does end up as a popular vote tie or close to it, the vote's got to go somewhere. And we may see some surprises in some exceptions where those coalitions have changed, and we're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And usually every election, there's a few that are just, they catch us with our pants down.
I know we're short of time, Kate, but the other question I want to watch in future sessions is, how does change election work under these circumstances? The electorate changes and evolves, but these issues are changing. So I've been arguing that Rustad's off base, that people actually want reconciliation. I think people are more literate about drug policy and understand there's a need for harm reduction, but I'm going to find out if I'm right or wrong. And, how Eby portrays himself as the agent of positive change is going to be a big question about how this turns out, I think.
That's fantastic.
Yes. I want to talk to you today about public safety and how our sponsor, FortisBC, works to keep communities safe during wildfire season. Some of the steps they take include application of fire suppression materials and fire blankets around infrastructure, clearing vegetation, and monitoring assets to maintain service for customers in the event sections of the FortisBC energy system are damaged. The employees of FortisBC live and work in the communities that they serve, so they too understand how wildfires impact families, homes, and businesses. Many FortisBC staff involved in the 2023 West Kelowna wildfire response were personally affected, whether they were on an evacuation alert themselves or helping friends and family evacuate safely. As an energy provider, FortisBC is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to responding to wildfires. Coordinating with emergency officials, BC Wildfire Services, and other local agencies is critical to maintaining the safe and reliable energy British Columbians rely on. On behalf of our sponsor, FortisBC, thank you to all of the crews, firefighters, emergency responders, and community members who work tirelessly to keep our communities safe during a busy wildfire season. FortisBC, energy for a better BC and a better podcast.
I'm going to move us along to our last segment. I'm just going to say, gentlemen, I'm predicting now that we are going to miss the halcyon days when we could go on for over an hour, and our kind producers at Air Quotes would just let us drive. A half hour is quick. All right. So the next topic, candidate roundup, is the way we will the last segment. And I think today I just want to start with something because we don't talk about them enough. I think, and we it's worth mentioning. The Greens are now up to 77 candidates, and I'm trying to think the last time we talked about them, right? I think it was you, Mike, just flagging like their numbers were really low, and they've seemed to have really kind of exploded out of the gate, and that's another kind of conflating what's the word, confusing factor that could make these riding by riding
Yeah,
estimates different.
they're pretty close to 2020 at this point. Like 2020, they're pretty close to full slate. So I assume there'll be more probably before the end of the week. So there'll probably be over 80. And Sonia, when she was on our show in August, said that she expected over 70. So she's gone a little higher than she was even thinking, at least what she told us. So that's, we can put to bed this idea of the missing Greens, except in some ridings. Like I still don't see any enrichment, or most of the Richmond ridings aren't covered like last time, which was a detriment to the BC Liberals last time. But for the most part, there are Greens. Now I take a riding like Bulkley Valley Stikine, where Nathan Cullen's running. I don't think he had a Green last time, and now he's got a Green and an Indigenous candidate who's opposed to the pipeline. And so I wonder, will that candidate have cut into what has traditionally been a huge stronghold for the NDP in that riding? So there will be some kind of riding by riding stories we'll have to pay closer attention to.
And Sonia Firstnow's the only leader who's promised to be nice throughout the campaign.
She's very nice.
She's very nice.
I talked to her at UBCM. I interviewed her on behalf of Hotel Pacifico. Unfortunately, I used my fist as a microphone, and it didn't quite work. I didn't have Jill, our producer, tied into my fist to capture the sound. But I did ask her what her favorite podcast was, and she said Hotel Pacifico.
Nice.
So she was on message.
For the record, well done, well done, well done. We'll try and bring that to all the candidates as we move about, all the leaders as we move about. Okay, and do we want to take stock just again? Like I think we want to go back to where these BC United MLAs and BC candidates BC United candidates have landed. We've got the 5 MLAs who've moved and are running of independents, and then what's the tally now on candidates?
Well, I think about 16 BC United candidates are running as independents.
Wow.
I think my numbers might be a little out there. But the most significant area, other than the MLAs, and there's 5 MLAs, is the Okanagan.
Yeah.
You've got strong independents because they're all BC United candidates that were, all recruited when everyone thought BC United was going to win these seats.
Yeah.
In Vernon, 3 of the 4 Kelownas, and Penticton. And I know there's been a lot of discussion up there about whether they should or whether they shouldn't run. And they're running. So yeah, it's hard to believe that they would do as well as if BC United was running and their leader was on the debate and they had advertising buys behind them. But there's just a bit of a different spirit with these independents. Like it's almost like they've been unleashed. Now, it would take a lot for them to get elected. I would rank Kevin Acton and Vernon as probably the best chance, and I still think he'd probably fall behind the NDP. Who knows? But it is a definitely different wrinkle in this campaign to have so many credible independents running.
Well, and I think the one time I saw John Rustad get visibly angry, and I thought maybe I'm seeing angry John Rustad, was when you discussed this topic when he was on being interviewed by you folks last week or whenever it was. He was quite clear that he thought it was wrong for people who had been BCU candidates to continue under any circumstances unless he signed off on it. That was pretty clear to me. He's not happy about it.
Well, the BC United situation is pretty messy. And
well understood.
I don't think it's other than contesting elections against these independents, I think Rustad will probably still take the deal because he removed an entire political party off the ballot and a leader out of the debate. that would be attacking him the whole time.
Mhm.
But it's come with collateral damage. And, BC United's got, there's still a party there. Kevin Falcon's still the leader. And after the election, it's going to be a very unhappy discussion over there.
I have to say, so I really enjoyed listening to the bonus episode you both did with Richard Sussman. One part where I basically whooped was when you got to the point about how the BC elections decision and how they cut all these independents off at the knees. Like I have a lot of sympathy for how that has played out, and I think it must have. I can only imagine how frustrated they all were and how much they had about literally probably a minute to feel sorry for themselves and then turn around. So yeah. Anyway, just to say too, really enjoyed that episode. All right, gentlemen, this is we got to go to the espresso bar. Well, we got to go to the espresso bar, and we are solidly caffeinated this morning. This is moving quickly. All right, so espresso bars, same as mini bars, same rules. You raise a glass or take a shot. In this case, I think because I think we're going to try and stay focused for this one on campaign strategy. And so it is kind of like, is this initiative giving a caffeinated jolt to the campaign, or is it decaf? Is it falling flat?
Can we raise a mug?
Yeah, go for it. We're flexible on receptacles here. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Mike with the props.
Right.
Geoff, you can't cut in on my
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were taking a pause, but go ahead.
Well, I was trying to. I guess I should do it after. Sorry. I'll raise my mug to Sonia First Snow and the Greens, who, as we said just a few moments ago, have defied expectations a bit by catching up and getting near full slate. I think they're going to be, and I'm not saying this just to cause trouble with the NDP here, but I think they will be a bit more of a factor than people were expecting in this election. Last election, they got over 15% of the vote. And they've been polling low double digits or even single digits for most of the summer. But I think now the campaign's on and people see the polarization between the NDP and the Conservatives will be much more harsh than it's ever been before, frankly, on an issue-by-issue basis. I think it creates a bit of an opening for the Greens to be the warm and cuddly positive option, irrespective of how goofy their policies are. So anyways, the fact that they're getting on the ballot, I'll raise a mug to that.
Yeah, I'm going to buy a round of espressos for the entire press corps because there's so few of them. And, I just think it's going to be a new feature of this campaign, new for me anyway, where earned media is not going to be that significant. To see Rustad's launch with like 5 cameras there, even though it was a pretty nice day right in the city, very close to all the media outlets, was a bit of a shock to me, to my system. So, keep going with all the fact checking and so forth. But I think we're seeing a campaign happen in a different place, and it's not in the pages of newspapers and on TV news screens. So all 6 of us can sit down for coffee as soon as we're done here.
Good one, Geoff. I hope we need to talk about this more, and I expect we will. Okay, I am also going to raise a glass, a caffeinated glass. I'm going to call it caffeinated. On the pivot of Mike Bernier's pulled off. I think I was just trolling through the socials of a lot of the independents to kind of see how they're pulling together their messaging, what they're articulating to voters. Mike Bernier's got an uphill battle, and he's among the ones I kind of think of when I think of, wow, what a raw deal you've had over the last few months. And you can go look at sort of Facebook, Instagram. He's got sort of a kind of launch that is really this like, I'm going to be the reasonable person in the room. I'm going to carry the balance of power, vote for me to sort of have your real say for Peace River South. It's a good articulation of the case for an independent. And yeah, my glass is raised to him. So, all right. That is our first episode of our special daily Hotel Pacifico election podcast. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsors, Fortis BC and BC Dairy. We will see you tomorrow, guests. BC, you can never leave.
Checkout time at Hotel Pacifico. We hope you enjoyed your stay.